I'm going to speak to you this afternoon about dreams. I've had many dreams that have come true, but before I start that, I'd like to read a quote from the writings of Baha'u'llah. This is from the Seven Valleys, from the Valley of Wonderment. Indeed, O brother, if we ponder each created thing, we shall witness a myriad perfect wisdoms and learn a myriad new and wondrous truths. One of the created phenomena is the dream. Behold how many secrets are deposited therein, how many wisdoms treasured up, how many worlds concealed. Observe how thou art asleep in a dwelling, and its doors are barred. On a sudden thou findest thyself in a far-off city, which thou enterest without moving thy feet or wearying thy body. Without using thine eyes thou seest, without taxing thine ears thou hearest, without a tongue thou speakest. And perchance, when 10 years are gone, thou wilt witness in the outer world the very things thou hast dreamed tonight. Now there are many wisdoms to ponder in the dream, which none but the people of this valley can comprehend in their true elements. First, what is this world, where without eye and ear and hand and tongue, a man puts all of these to use? Second, how is it that in the outer world thou seest today the effect of a dream when thou didst vision it in the world of sleep some 10 years past? Consider the difference between these two worlds and the mysteries which they conceal, that thou mayest attain to divine confirmations and heavenly discoveries, and enter the regions of holiness. God the Exalted hath placed those signs in men to the end that philosophers may not deny the mysteries of the life beyond, nor belittle that which hath been promised them. For some hold to reason, and deny whatever the reason comprehendeth not. And yet weak minds can never grasp the matters which we have related, but only the supreme divine intelligence can comprehend them. Now, my story is really one that starts in my childhood. I was the kind of child that didn't really trust adults, and therefore I didn't trust books, because adults wrote books and they could say whatever they wanted to say, and it was important to me as a child to know the truth. So I didn't read and I didn't investigate a lot of things firsthand, but what I did was I would write letters to God and I would mail them in trees. I'd find a little nook or cranny and I'd put the letter in, and when I would look the next day it would be gone. Maybe some squirrel was using it for its nest, but anyway, I would then have a dream or some kind of message that I felt was an answer to that letter. So I grew reliant on my dreams at a very early age. And one of the dreams that I'd like to share with you today is how I became a member of the Baha'i Faith. I was searching for a long time. After high school, I told my parents that they had given me the responsibility in the material world, and I wanted it in the spiritual world. I had been raised Catholic, but didn't feel like a Catholic. So I was telling my parents, I'm going to be responsible and find out who I am. So I would ride my bike out into the country and just ask God to guide me. And because of my relationship to books and to adults, I didn't really ask anybody. I didn't read anything. I didn't go to different churches and investigate. I just would ask God directly, please guide me. And I was very sincere about this search. So then I went to Europe with 2 friends, and while we were traveling for several months, I started having this dream, which repeated itself all through the trip. And the dream was of a building in my hometown, and I recognized the building, but all of a sudden this man would come into the building and he would say, whoever wants to learn about a New World religion, come into this room. And I, of course, was curious because of my search, so I would go into that room. And then the dream would sort of suspend itself. There was no action, no words, nothing to see, but it would just be like in this state of suspension. And then the dream would pick up with me coming out of the room, and I would be filled with this pure joy. There was no other emotion, just pure joy. And I would share this dream with my 2 traveling companions. And they got to know after a while when I had the dream, because I'd wake up and they'd look at me and they'd say, "You had that dream again, didn't you?" And apparently, from what they told me, I was just glowing. And I said to them, "I'm going to that house when we get back to the States, and I'm going to find out what is in there." So when I came back to the States, Vermont, I called this place, which was a group home for juvenile delinquents. It was a project of the University of Vermont. And I said, "I want to work at your group home." And they said, "Thank God," because their tutor had just quit and they really needed somebody because these boys had a lot of problems, and there were 2 house parents, but they needed this 3rd adult. So I basically got the job right then and there over the phone, and part of that was I had been working and teaching in the whole county, so had a reputation and they knew my name. So I started working the next day, and as you can imagine, it's a very stressful job, and the kids would pull knives and all kinds of things. So the house parents quit. I started in the spring, and by December they had it and they quit. So in January, 2 new house parents were hired, and the man was the man from my dream. And I recognized him. He looked exactly the same, and I thought, wow, this is this man from my dream, but because I didn't know them, I didn't say anything. And so then, after getting to know them, working with them, being with them, seeing their friends and how they treated each other, how they treated the children that we worked with, I was very impressed. And I said to them one day, "You people have something and I want it. What is it?" And they said, "We're Baha'is." And that didn't mean anything to me because I had no frame of reference. I had never read anything in the dream. It never said Baha'i. It just said New World Religion. So I didn't really know what that meant. And I was a little hesitant to investigate because we lived together and worked together, and I didn't want to, jeopardize the friendship. So I didn't do anything at first, but then when they would leave the house, I would go into their living room and I would just look at all the books on their bookshelf. And I would see these names like Kitabi Akdas and Kitabi Gan, and I thought, what is this? And one day I noticed there was a book called God Loves Laughter. And I thought, well, I believe in God, I believe in love, I believe in laughter, I could read that book. So I had no idea it was even a Baha'i book. So I took that book and I read it, and of course I asked their permission and they said yes. But after reading that book, I felt, yes, the Baha'i Faith is true. And I did join the Baha'i Faith after that. Well, we continued working and living together, and a couple years later we were invited to a wedding. And the husband said, well, I don't have anything to wear to the wedding, I'm going to go out and buy some clothes. So he goes out and he comes back with this great big box, big huge box, puts it on the table, and his wife says, okay, let's see what you got. Now I hadn't said earlier, but in the dream this man always wore the same outfit. And I'd think, who is this person? Because nobody in Vermont dresses like this. He had on a navy blue cowboy silk shirt with red piping and white pearl buttons, an off-white linen pair of pants and jacket to match, cowboy boots, and his hair was always pulled back in a ponytail. So I knew he wasn't from Vermont, but I couldn't figure out where he was from. I'd never met him before. So anyway, he opens up the box. Here are those clothes. The navy blue silk cowboy shirt, the linen pants and jacket. So I looked at him and I said, oh, there they are, because I had just assumed the clothes were incidental to the dream. So even though he fulfilled part of the dream, some months after I'd had the dream several times, the clothes didn't appear till 2 years later. So that's how I became a Baha'i.
Thank you so much. That was such fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd like to share with you today a couple of dreams that mean a lot to me because they both came true, and it explains some of the timing in, as we said yesterday, in the Seven Valleys, when Baha'u'llah talks about perhaps after 10 years you see your dream in this world. But it's not always 10 years. Sometimes it's sooner, sometimes it's later. So these two examples are dreams that came true right away. One is that when I went to college, I was 35 years old, so I had long been on my own, supporting myself, and I had to pay for college, which meant I also had to work while I was going to school. So I was working 35 hours a week, taking a full credit load of 18 credits, going to class, and there literally wasn't time to do all of the work because each professor gives you homework as if they're your only professor, and you have that many more classes, so you have that much more work. So I would say my evening prayers and I would tell Baha'u'llah, I literally don't have time to do the research, but I want to do well because excellence in all things, especially for Baha'is, and being 35 years old, I wanted to be a good example. So I said, you'll have to help me out by doing the research. I'll do the work, I'll write the papers, I'll go to class, but you've got to help me out here. So I would go to sleep and I would have a dream, and in the dream I would see a book with the title very clearly, and then the next thing I would see would be the page number, and then it would focus in on a certain paragraph of that page. So I knew that the next day I could go to the library, and I didn't even have time to look for the book, so I would ask the librarian, do you have such and such a book? They would go and get it, bring it to me. I had no idea if the book even existed, but I just trusted that Baha'u'llah was helping me, so the librarian would go and get the book, I'd bring it home, open it to that page, there would be that paragraph, and I would just plug it into whatever paper I was working on, and that's how I got helped during my college career. Somebody said, oh, you were cheating, but I think of it as Baha'u'llah tells us to ask in prayer for what we want. It's conversation with God. That's what prayer is, conversation. And just like you would ask a friend to help you if you needed something, I consider the central figures of my faith my friends. So I ask, and if I receive, I say thank you. So that's one story that happened immediately. The other one is I used to be a nanny for two little brothers, and I took care of them for 4 years, starting when the youngest was 5 months old. When he turned 2, it was almost as if somebody flipped a switch, and he just started speaking in full sentences. Had never done that before, had just, said little words and sounds, but all of a sudden these full sentences were coming out of him. Well, about a week after his birthday, I was in my home, asleep, dreaming, not about him or his brother, just having my own dream, and all of a sudden into my dream broke this little boy, this little 2-year-old, and he was calling me so urgently that it scared me to death. The image I had was his little face was forward, and he had 2 little fists behind his back like this, and he was going, Senan! He couldn't say my name, Sue Ellen, so he was going, Senan! Senan! And I woke up and I looked at the clock. It was only 5 o'clock in the morning, so I couldn't call his parents to find out what was going on. I thought, well, if something really is happening to him, they'll call me and I won't go to work, or I'll go later. Well, nothing happened, so my usual time I went to work, and I got there and everything seemed normal. So for the 4 years that I took care of these boys, every morning at snack, I would just casually ask them, did anybody have any dream last night? Because I wanted them to have access to the dream world and to understand it and know that it was a real world, and it wasn't just something that was happening while they were sleeping, and they could talk to me or whoever they wanted to about their dreams. So this morning was no different. I just casually said at snack, so did anybody have any dreams last night? And this little 2-year-old, without missing a beat, says, yes, I dreamed about you. I was calling you. And he put his body in the same position, made 2 little fists, put them behind his back, leaned forward and said, I was calling you. I said, Senan! Senan! And I said to him, well, you know what? I heard you and I saw you. I was asleep in my home, having my own dream. You broke right into my dream. And I said, what did you want that was so important that you had to do that? He said, I want to go to the museum today. I said, fine, we can do that. And we went to the museum. So I think talking with your children about dreams, even as a teacher I did this with students, it's very important. And even with very young children, a class of 2-year-olds, I had them make dream catchers because they were interested in spiders and webs. So I connected this curriculum to what they were already interested in. And I made these dream catchers with them, and the whole time we were making them, I just talked to them about dreams. And often children have nightmares and they don't know what to do with them, and they don't really understand what a dream is. So I told them, if you have a nightmare, you can invite somebody into your dream, somebody that you love, somebody that you trust, somebody that you feel safe with. You can invite them into your dream for help. So I had this class with these 2-year-olds. About 3 or 4 months later, I was taking care of one of the children for her parents. And she said to me over dinner, we were just sitting talking, and she said to me, you know, Sue Ellen, I did what you said. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I had a dream and I was scared, and I told my father, I want you to come into my dream and help me. And I said, really? And did he? And she said, yes, he came into my dream. And I said, and what did he do? She said, he took my hand and he talked with me and I was okay. And then I woke up. And I was amazed. I mean, even though I have a firm belief in dreams, this little 2-year-old who was just part of a group took that information in, applied it, and several months later remembered to tell it to me. So it was very impressive.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.